The fluorescent lights at Northcrest Regional Medical Center hum like tired bees while midnight presses against the windows. Antiseptic and old coffee share the air. A woman named Amaya Rowan presses a palm to her side and chooses the smallest step she can take without letting the pain win. She came for care and found a clipboard. She brought symptoms and met procedure. The line between those two things thins by the minute. Behind plexiglass, a nurse with weary eyes asks for proof, insurance, ID, a tidy package of certainty. Amaya explains her wallet is in checked luggage from a late flight, that the stabbing in her side has sharpened from nuisance to knife. She isn't asking for mercy, just triage. The clipboard slides forward anyway, carrying a weight that stretches until the clock forgets how to move. Names are called. Hers is not. A child cries, then sleeps sideways on a parent's lap. A vending machine coughs out a bottle and wears the noise like a badge. The posters promise hygiene and order. The room delivers delay. Twice Amaya stands to ask again. Twice the same flat reply arrives. "We're processing your paperwork." She sits because there is nowhere else to go. When the ER doors swing and a senior physician strides through with a perfect coat and a practiced air, hope lifts its head. Amaya steadies herself and asks for evaluation. His gaze skims hoodie, travel-wrecked hair, bare face, pausing nowhere. He announces, louder than necessary, that the department is handling real crises, and that free clinics exist for people seeking warmth. The word free lands like a small public slap. Security smiles as if the moment is entertainment. She says she can pay, that her insurance app lives in her phone if they will look. He doesn't. He turns refusal into order and order into motion. Hands arrive where a hand should be. Guards move her toward the doors the way men move something heavy they're ready to be rid of. Her phone slips, cracks on tile, and the screen spits a spiderweb of light. The room performs the quiet arithmetic of self-preservation. The doors cough her into winter. Brick meets her shoulder until the spin in her head becomes a border she can stand behind. If the story ended there, it would join 1,000 others told under breath at kitchen tables. It doesn't end there. It starts. Morning cuts cleanly through glass in a high-rise across town. Painkiller fog lifts. The ache remains, steady as a metronome. Amaya's reflection looks like restraint wearing resolve. She has been underestimated often enough to know what to do with it. Institutions apologize to headlines. She does not want an apology. She wants gravity to change. At 7:15, she begins dialing numbers that wake authority. Counsel, finance, operations. By 8, papers are in motion that most people never see. At 6 a.m., legally speaking, Northcrest belongs to the company she built against odds, suspicion, and inertia. Power has a morning routine. Hers includes a black suit, a tight bun, and the pearl earrings her mother wore on hard days. Softness threaded through steel. At 9, she walks into a boardroom that smells like permanent decisions. The executive chair is mid-sentence about ER costs when he notices her and tries to pivot into indignation. He tilts his chin to summon security the way he has for 2 decades. No one comes. The badges answer elsewhere now. Amaya introduces herself as the new owner and lets silence do the rest. She moves along the table and places a photograph before the physician who watched her removal with a smirk, the image of her bent with pain, security at her arms. She does not raise her voice. She announces a new standard. The first termination is swift and sounds like a badge unclipped from a collar, but a single name is not the rot. The rot is the pattern beneath the paint. Hospitals generate data like cities generate noise. Learn to listen, and the pressure points speak. With Lila, her investigations lead, Amaya begins to pull reports that usually die as attachments. Redirect rates by symptom, admissions by zip code, triage categories, discharge notes, billing codes, the euphemisms that carry harm without triggering alarms. The numbers draw shape. Then a nurse with silver in her hair and spine in her voice gives the shape a name. Ruth Ellington has stood more night shifts than any person should. From her scrub pocket she draws a small notebook with bent corners. Inside are dates, initials, brief outcomes. She recorded them because the system that should have recorded them did not. She has waited decades for the day someone would ask for the notebook and mean it. Together they triangulate the unofficial against the official. They find mothers with feverish infants marked non-urgent without recorded vitals. Elders with chest pain sent home with antacids. Teenagers with obvious fractures advised to stop acting. On paper, many left without being seen, a phrase that implies choice and erases abandonment. In life, too many died that night or the next. The hospital billed assessment fees either way. Money moved through subsidiaries with friendly names and faint trails. One signature repeats like a watermark. It belongs to the chair. Amaya orders an audit that refuses to blink. 5 years back. Redirects, deaths, dollars, and the meeting minutes where euphemism learned to pass for policy. Layla warns that the chair's reach extends past the hospital and into agencies, commissions, and offices that appreciate a steady donor. Ruth warns that quiet threats will arrive before loud ones. The first appears in block letters on a black monitor that should be asleep. Drop the audit or you'll regret it. Amaya photographs it. Regret is a page from a book she no longer reads. By noon, the fired physician stands in the hallway polishing a narrative for a camera. 30 years of service, replaced by politics. Medicine under siege by algorithms. That evening, the news airs edited clips that turn a justified appeal into unattractive anger. Context is cut first. She mutes the sound and makes lists instead. Reporters who value evidence over access. Outlets that publish truth before popularity. Staff who will speak if they do not have to speak alone. Basements hold a hospital's memory. Northcrest's looks like rows of metal shelving and fading labels that pretend neutrality. Amaya moves with a flashlight and the careful breath that gets people through difficult things. She finds the security archive. 5 years of footage in cold storage. A red dot marks one box as special. She pockets a drive. Footsteps approach. Flashlight beams comb the rows like search dogs without voices. Ruth's whisper arrives first. She did not intend to let Amaya navigate the dark alone. She knows which boxes matter and which labels lie. Together they open a drive that asks for a password. Together they guess the kind an untouchable executive chooses. The folders open, images and audio spill. On screen, people do what fear teaches. They ask for help. A nurse recites delays with practiced calm. A doctor uses a joke as armor at the worst possible moment. Security lingers, waiting to be deputized by a nod. The files live in a folder named Incidents. They include the night of Amaya's removal, this time with audio intact. The voice that dismissed her wears marble and habit. It is no longer a story. It is evidence. They copy everything and reseat the box just as a second flashlight washes the door frame. In the stairwell, a lock shows fresh scratches. In the parking lot, a black SUV idles with its lights off, the kind of presence that announces itself by refusing to. Amaya buckles the briefcase into the passenger seat. It carries pieces of a system's soul. Morning brings an unexpected visitor. A medical student named Adam, the physician's son. He doesn't come to defend. He brings memos that wrap discrimination in cotton and spreadsheets that turn people into ratios. Risk profiles by race and zip code. redirect targets dressed as efficiency, incentives for reducing losses. At the top of an internal leaderboard, his father's name appears again and again. Will he testify? Yes. He leaves to gather more. Through the glass, his car merges into traffic. The black SUV knifes into his lane. Metal screams, guardrail yields. In the gully, he bleeds and breathes and says two words that cut through everything else. They knew. Sirens take it from there. The rest is not politics anymore. It is crime. At 5 a.m., the smear campaign proliferates. Edited clips loop. An emergency board meeting suspends the CEO pending investigation. Security waits by the elevator. In her office, the safe gapes. The master drive is gone. An unknown voice calls with a trade. Withdraw the claims. Keep your title. Keep your nurse's license safe. Keep your friend unhurt. Or don't. By evening, comment sections perform their old vocabulary. Amaya lets the wait sit for a minute, then stands. You cannot convince a machine designed for a single answer. You can root around it. At midnight, Lila's apartment becomes a newsroom and a bunker. Ruth brings a copy no one else knew existed. Jenny, a night shift nurse, brings clips from months of moments that refuse to leave her conscience. A lab tech arrives, a billing clerk, an orderly. Small truths that only matter together begin to fit. Before dawn, a live stream from inside the ER reaches the world. It shows a woman with chest pain labeled non-urgent without vitals. It shows how triage can be theater. Mirrors sprout before takedowns can chase them. By noon, protesters stand outside with signs, "Patience before profit. Equal care now." The governor's office announces a preliminary investigation with an edge. For once, the evening news cannot avoid context. It is streaming live. Amaya pulls a hood over pinned hair and steps into the crowd to stand inside the chain she asked for. Someone recognizes her. The chant shifts from complaint to promise. Cameras for a moment behave. Marble halls and microphones come next. Hearings are theater, but sometimes theater tells the truth. The chair arrives with lawyers. The fired physician arrives with a tick where a smirk used to be. They call the investigation fabricated, the evidence doctored. The committee chair allows a drive into the record. Screens fill with authenticated footage. The room exhales into gasps. The physician breaks first, pointing at the chair with the desperation of a drowning man naming a rock as a boat. The final clip plays, the night of Amaya's removal with audio that was never meant to be heard. Ruth lays a binder on the table, dozens of staff statements, a chorus of whispered truths finally speaking up together. Agents move. Somewhere under the hospital, a hand moves toward a delete command and finds a wrist in an FBI grip. That afternoon, handcuffs click in the hallway where triage once turned into prejudice. The physician passes without a white coat. Shame is hard to photograph, but the lens finds it anyway in the fold of shoulders and the refusal to meet eyes. Adam watches from a chair with a neck brace and a steadiness that comes from pain and purpose combined. He asks what happens now. "Now we rebuild," Amaya says, and means 1,000 unglamorous steps done exactly right. 3 weeks later, headlines gather like rain finally deciding to fall. Executives indicted. Grand jury charges. The chair arrested after a short, humiliating absence. The medical board revokes a license that should have been surrendered years earlier. Congressional testimony turns what happened into policy language and oversight teeth. Inside the building, workers loosen bolts on the old sign and lift new letters into place. The Rowan Institute for Equal Care reads less like branding and more like an oath. On reopening day, the plaza fills with people who have the most to gain and the least reason to trust. Amaya steps to a microphone and chooses not to retell the wound. She talks about repair, technology that flags bias in real time, training that doesn't end with a quiz, policies that tie intention to outcome, not excuse. The tarp drops. Applause sounds like permission to start. Morning tests everything. Sunlight angles across new glass in a lobby softened without losing edge. At the desk, the same nurse stands to help an elderly woman with pain and questions. Concern no longer performs. It acts. Down a hall, a resident carries a tablet with a dashboard now central to rounds. Wait times are even. Pain medication rates show no demographic cliffs. Consults are ordered for symptoms, not stereotypes. When metrics drift, alerts fire. When alerts fire, a conversation happens. The chain feels human again. In pediatrics, a doctor sits cross-legged to match a child's gaze. In another corridor, a nurse practitioner explains a plan in Spanish without waiting for a translator. Artwork mirrors the city, not a hotel catalog. Even the vending machine seems to have learned, offering choices different bodies can use. Details matter because they broadcast who the building believes belongs. On a wall, everyone passes. A plaque reads, "Every life deserves care." No exceptions. Beside it hang photographs with short accounts of patients the old system failed. Stories folded into orientation for every new employee. Not to dramatize, to remember. Forgetting is how harm repeats. Memory is how it stops. Through glass, a mobile care unit in institute colors parks at the curb. Adam shows an older man how to work a blood pressure cuff until the number is less frightening. Ruth walks a family toward intake with the confidence of someone who can finally do in daylight what she did in shadow. Lila pockets a buzzing phone and looks at the lobby because some views are worth a pause. Security greets visitors with de-escalation instead of posture. Administrators carry tablets instead of folders that conveniently disappear. In the command center, the bias dashboard glows steady green. A small yellow blinks in one quadrant. A nurse manager and a physician meet for 5 minutes and make a change. The number responds. The screen records it. The culture absorbs it. In afternoon light, Amaya steps outside and studies the letters over the door. She lets herself think briefly about the night the building exhaled her into the cold and how everything since has bent in reply. Justice does not erase every wound. Scars are not failures, they are records. But justice stops the next cut. Justice makes a system notice what it trained itself not to see. Justice says who you are when you walk in will never again decide whether you are allowed to move past the door. People will call this revenge. They will be wrong. Revenge ends with a headline and a casualty. Repair begins with a headline and continues with 1,000 steady choices nobody applauds. Audits and law, schedules and stamina, processes that outlast personalities. Repair requires a nurse who kept a notebook because she knew a day would come. It requires a team that copies drives, backs up backups, and refuses to confuse exhaustion with completion. It requires a community that shows up with signs because change needs witnesses. By evening, the plaza quiets. Inside, the building keeps its rhythm. Monitors and footsteps, grief and relief, questions and answers. On her way out, Amaya pauses by the crooked blue chair that once held her together. It still leans a degree to the left, like memory. She touches its back and lets the moment stay what it is, the beginning of a promise kept. If this story finds you in a waiting room where paperwork outruns compassion, consider it an invitation. Complexity is real. Budgets are real. But systems are choices tied together, and choices can be remade. If you are a patient, your pain is not a negotiation. If you work inside, your conscience is not a liability. If you lead, accountability is not an attack. Somewhere in your town, there is a Northcrest. Somewhere in your town, there is also a Ruth keeping a notebook, a Lila reading what numbers refuse to say, an Adam choosing truth, and an Amaya ready to change the hallway where she stands. Share this story if it helps you see the pattern beneath the paint. Subscribe if you want another tomorrow. Injustice is productive until someone interrupts it. And if you're watching from a waiting room tonight, may the next name called be yours, and may the voice that calls it sound exactly like care should sound, certain, immediate, and sure that you belong on the other side of the door.